The acrid smell of burning metal and ozone still hung in the air 3 days after the attack. Kai Torrens adjusted his respirator and stepped carefully through the twisted wreckage that had once been Supply Bay 7. His heavy work boots crunched. On scattered debris, fragments of cargo containers, pieces of destroyed mining equipment, and the occasional shard of what might have been alien technology. The Kepler 442c mining station had been lucky, if you could call it that. The Threnody raiders had come for the rare Earth deposits, not to massacre civilians. They'd taken what they wanted from the outer storage bays and left. But not before, reducing half the station's infrastructure to scrap metal. Now it fell to people like Kai to clean up the mess. He hefted his plasma cutter and approached another twisted beam. As the station's senior maintenance engineer, cleanup duty wasn't officially his job. But with half the crew either dead or evacuated, everyone did what needed doing. The steady hum of the cutter filled the air as he worked, methodically separating salvageable materials from worthless slag. A distant clang made him pause. In the relative silence of the damaged bay, any unexpected sound demanded attention. Kai switched off his cutter and listened. There, a faint scraping noise, like metal dragging against metal. Following the sound, deeper into the wreckage, he picked his way around a collapsed support structure. The scraping came again, definitely not settling debris. Something was moving in there. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing strangely in the damaged space. "Anyone there? If you're hurt, I can help." The scraping stopped abruptly. Then, from behind a pile of mangled storage containers, came a sound that made his blood freeze, a low, menacing growl that definitely wasn't human. Kai's hand instinctively moved to the emergency beacon on his belt, but he didn't activate it. Not yet. Instead, he approached slowly, one hand raised in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm not armed," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm just here to clean up. I don't want to hurt anyone." What he found behind the containers defied every survival instinct he possessed. Sprawled among the twisted metal lay a figure that was unmistakably alien, yet undeniably female. Her skin was a deep blue-gray that seemed to shimmer even in the dim emergency lighting, and intricate silver markings traced patterns across her arms and face like living tattoos. She was tall, probably 6.5 feet if she stood, with a lean, muscular build that spoke of both strength and grace. She was also badly injured. Dark blue blood matted her long white hair, and angry wounds covered her torso and limbs. Her breathing was shallow and labored, and one of her arms hung, at an unnatural angle. When she saw him, her golden eyes snapped open fully, and she tried to rise, snarling something in a language he didn't recognize. The effort cost her. She collapsed back against the debris, gasping. Kai took another step closer, noting the way. She flinched despite trying to maintain her aggressive posture. "Easy," he said softly, the same tone he'd use with a wounded animal. "I'm not going to hurt you." She spoke again, and this time he caught fragments of accented standard. "Human. Kill me, and done with it." The resignation in her voice hit him like a physical blow. She wasn't just injured. She was expecting him to either murder her or call security to do it for them. The thought that she'd been lying here for 3 days, wounded and expecting death, made something clench painfully in his chest. "No," he said firmly, crouching down slowly so they were closer to eye level. "No one's killing anyone. What's your name?" Those golden eyes studied him with obvious suspicion. When she spoke again, her standard was clearer, though heavily accented. "Why do you ask, human? Planning to carve it on my grave marker?" Despite everything, Kai almost smiled at the acid in her tone. Even wounded and abandoned, she had fight in her. "I ask because if I'm going to help you, I'd like to know what to call you. My name's Kai." "Help?" The concept seemed to genuinely confuse her. "I am Threnody, your enemy, your people and mine." "Your people left you here to die," Kai interrupted gently. "That makes you a survivor, not my enemy." For a long moment, She simply stared at him. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she whispered, "Vexhai. My name is Vexhai." "Well, Vexhai," Kai said, already mentally cataloging what medical supplies he had in his quarters. "Let's get you somewhere safe and figure out how to patch you up." When he reached out to help her stand, she didn't pull away. Kai's quarters were barely large enough for one person, let alone two, especially when one of them was over 6 feet tall and radiated hostility like heat from a fusion core. Vexhai sat rigidly on the edge of his narrow bunk, golden eyes tracking his every movement as he gathered medical supplies from his emergency kit. "This is adequate," she said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. Her gaze swept over the cramped space, the fold-down desk, the single chair, the shelf of technical manuals and personal items that comprised his entire life. "It's not much, but it's private," Kai replied, setting a bowl of warm water on the desk alongside antiseptic and bandages. "No one will bother us here." She flinched when he approached with a damp cloth. "I can tend my own wounds." "With a broken arm?" He nodded toward her left side where her shoulder sat at an unnatural angle. "Look, I'm not trying to. I just want to help. Please." Vexhai studied his face for a long moment as if searching for deception. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her, because she gave a barely perceptible nod. Kai moved slowly, telegraphing each action. When he began cleaning the wound on her forehead, she went rigid, every muscle tense. Her skin was warm to the touch and had an almost silky texture despite its obvious strength. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why what?" "Why help me? Your people died in the attack. My people killed them." Her voice was flat, matter of fact, but he caught the tension underneath. Kai paused in his cleaning. "Because you're hurt. Because leaving someone to suffer when I can help would make me less than human." He resumed his gentle ministrations. "And because whoever did this to you, it wasn't warfare. This was cruelty." She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't respond. Then, "I showed mercy to human prisoners during the raid on Proxima Station. My war leader called it weakness, said I had been contaminated by human softness." The words came out bitter, like poison she needed to expel. "So they left me with your dead as a reminder of what mercy costs." Kai's hands stilled. "You saved human lives? I allowed them to escape instead of killing them as ordered." She met his eyes directly. "It was a mistake." "No," he said firmly, resuming his careful work. "It was brave. It was right." A harsh laugh escaped her. "Right? I am Threnody. We are warriors. We do not show weakness to enemies. Mercy isn't weakness." Kai moved to examine her shoulder, noting how she tried not to wince. "This is going to hurt. I need to set the bone." She nodded curtly, gripping the edge of the bunk with her good hand. When he manipulated the joint back into place, she bit back a cry, her whole body shuddering with the effort to stay silent. "There," he said softly, beginning to wrap the shoulder. "You can let it out if you need to. No one here will think less of you for feeling pain." Vexhai's breathing was ragged, but her voice remained steady. "Pain is educational. It teaches us our limits." "What does kindness teach?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She watched him work in silence as he moved on to the cuts. Along her ribs, his touch careful and impersonal despite the intimacy of the situation. "I do not know," she admitted finally. "Kindness was not part of my education." Over the next few hours, Kai learned more about Threnody culture than any human xenosociologist had managed to document. Vexhai spoke in fragments, as if each revelation cost her something. Their society was built on strength and honor, where showing vulnerability meant death or exile. Children were trained from birth to fight, to conquer, to never show mercy. "But you did show mercy," Kai pointed out, offering her a cup of synthesized broth. She accepted it warily, sniffing the contents before taking a cautious sip. A momentary lapse. But she didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe you're more than what they tried to make you." She looked at him sharply. You know nothing of what I am, human. Kai, he corrected gently. And you're right. I don't know much about the Threnody, but I know you could have killed me back in that wreckage. You were hurt, desperate, probably thought I was there to finish you off. But you didn't even try. Vexhai set down the cup, her expression troubled. Perhaps I was too weak. Or perhaps you chose not to. That night she insisted on sleeping on the floor despite his protests. Kai gave her his spare blanket and pillow, trying not to notice how she curled in on herself, or how her breathing hitched occasionally with pain. He was nearly asleep when her voice came softly through the darkness. Kai? Yeah? The humans I spared. There was a child among them. Small, frightened. She reminded me of a long pause. I had a sister once, before the academy, before they taught us that family bonds were weakness. Kai said nothing, sensing she needed to speak without interruption. I have not thought of her in many cycles. But when I saw that human child, her voice trailed off. What happened to your sister? She was weak, could not keep up with the training. They said she died in an accident. The words were flat, emotionless, but Kai heard the grief underneath. I never questioned it, never mourned her. Good soldiers do not mourn. But you remembered her? Yes. A whisper in the dark. I remembered. In the morning, Kai woke to find Vexahai sitting up, staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. The hostility was gone, replaced by something more complex, confusion, maybe, or the beginning of trust. You sleep without weapons, she observed. Should I not? Most would with an enemy in their quarters. Kai sat up, running a hand through his hair. You're not my enemy, Vexhai. You're my guest. She tilted her head, testing the word. Guest. This means friend? It can, he said carefully, if you want it to. For the first time since he'd found her, Vexhai almost smiled. A week had passed since Kai brought Vexhai to his quarters, and the cramped space had taken on an oddly domestic quality. She moved with increasing confidence as her injuries healed, though she still favored her left shoulder. More importantly, the suspicious tension that had defined her every interaction was gradually giving way to something Kai dared to call curiosity. Your stance is wrong, she said, watching him attempt the basic defensive positions she'd been teaching him. Humans think too much with their minds, not enough with their bodies. Kai lowered his arms, breathing hard. For someone recovering from serious injuries, Vexhai was a demanding instructor. Maybe because most humans don't learn to fight before they can walk. A failing of your species. But there was no malice in her tone anymore, almost something like fondness. Again, feel the balance, do not think it. He raised his guard and tried to center himself the way she'd shown him. This time, when she moved to test his defense with a slow, controlled strike, he managed to deflect it properly. Better, she acknowledged, and the small praise warmed him more than it should have. Their lessons had become a daily ritual. In return for combat training, Kai taught her about human technology, showing her how the station's systems worked, explaining the engineering principles behind things she'd only seen as tools of war. She absorbed everything with an intensity that spoke of a keen intelligence deliberately sharpened into a weapon. Your people build things to last, she observed, running her fingers along the smooth metal of a maintenance panel. Threnody technology is designed for maximum impact, then replacement. Different philosophies, I guess. We build for permanence because we want to leave something behind, something that matters. Vexhai paused in her examination. And what do you want to leave behind, Kai Torrens? The question caught him off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. I don't know. Maybe just the knowledge that I helped more than I hurt, that the universe was a little better because I was in it. She studied his face with those penetrating golden eyes. You are a strange human. Strange how? Most warriors I have known seek glory, conquest, the fear of their enemies. You seek peace. Is that so wrong? No, she said softly. Just unfamiliar. Their conversations had grown longer and more personal as the days passed. During meals, simple rations that Kai tried to make more palatable with whatever seasonings he could scrounge, Vexhai began sharing fragments of her past. Her childhood in the warrior academies, the brutal training regimens, the systematic elimination of anything that might be considered weakness. "We had a saying," she told him one evening as they shared a packet of reconstituted protein. "The heart that loves is the first to bleed." Love was seen as a liability, something that could be exploited by enemies. "Do you believe that?" Vexhai was quiet for a long moment, absently tracing one of the silver markings on her arm. "I did. It was safer to believe it. And now I am not certain of anything I was taught." She looked at him directly. "You have shown me kindness without expecting anything in return. This does not fit with what I learned about humans. What did they teach you about us? That you were weak, emotional, that your capacity for attachment made you vulnerable, easy to manipulate." Her expression grew troubled. "But you are not weak, Kai. Different, perhaps, but not weak." He felt heat rise in his cheeks at the assessment. "I'm not much of a warrior. There are different kinds of strength." Her hand moved almost unconsciously to rest over his where it lay on the small table between them. "You have the courage to be gentle in a universe that rewards cruelty. That is rare." The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him, and from the way her eyes widened slightly, he knew she felt it too. Neither of them moved to break the contact. "Vexhai," he said quietly. "What's your real name? Your full name, I mean." "Vexhai is my full name," she replied, confusion creeping into her voice. "Why do you ask?" It sounds like a title or a rank. Don't your people have personal names, family names?" Something flickered across her features. Pain, loss, he couldn't tell. "I had another name once, before the academy. But that child died when she became a warrior." "What was it?" She hesitated, then spoke a word in her own language, musical and complex. When she repeated it in standard, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Kaithari." It meant song of the morning, wind, Kaithari. He tried the pronunciation, stumbling slightly over the unfamiliar syllables. "It's beautiful. My sister chose it for me," she said, her thumb unconsciously stroking across his knuckles. "She said I hummed like the wind through the crystal formations, near our home." The intimacy of the revelation combined with the gentle touch made Kai's heart race. Would you mind if I called you that sometimes? When we're alone?" She stared at him for a long moment, and he worried he'd overstepped some boundary. Then, slowly, she nodded. I would like that." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Kai found himself leaning closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. Vexhai, Kaithari, didn't pull away. Her golden eyes searched his face, and he saw his own uncertainty reflected there. "Kai," she whispered, "I do not know how to." "I have never, neither have I," he admitted. "Not like this." When their lips met, it was tentative, questioning. She tasted of alien spices and something uniquely her own. The kiss was soft, experimental, and when they broke apart, both were breathing unsteadily. "Is this what humans call love?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "I don't know," Kai said honestly. "But I know I care about you. I know that when I thought you might die, something inside me broke, and I know that right now there's nowhere else in the universe I'd rather be." She reached up with her good hand to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw with wonder. "You are teaching me that hearts which love do not always bleed. Sometimes they sing." When she kissed him again, there was nothing tentative about it. 2 weeks had transformed everything. Kai's quarters, once a simple place to sleep between shifts, had become a sanctuary where two worlds touched and found harmony. Vexhai, Kaithari, as he called her in their most intimate moments, had not only healed physically but seemed to blossom in ways he was only beginning to understand. She lay beside him now in the narrow bunk, her blue-gray skin luminous in the soft light of the bedside lamp. The silver markings that traced her arms and shoulders seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Her head rested on his chest, white hair spilling across his skin like starlight. "Tell me again about Earth," she murmured, tracing lazy patterns on his ribs with her fingertip. "You've heard all my stories twice over," Kai said, but he was smiling. He loved these quiet moments after they'd made love, when the universe contracted to just the two of them, and nothing else mattered. "I like the one about the ocean, the way you described the sound of waves." She lifted her head to look at him, golden eyes soft with contentment. "I want to see it someday." "We could," he said, surprised by his own words. "I mean, my contract here is almost up. I could request a transfer to a station closer to Earth. We could go together." Cathari went very still. "Together? If you want to." Suddenly nervous, Kai struggled to sit up without disturbing her. "I know it's complicated. Different species your people might not understand." She silenced him with a kiss, fierce and claiming. When they broke apart, her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, I want that more than anything." They spent the night planning impossible dreams, a small cabin by the sea where she could learn to swim and he could teach her about human poetry, a garden where they might grow the crystal flowers she remembered from her homeworld alongside earth roses. Children, maybe, if such a thing were possible, a blend of their two peoples raised with love instead of war. "I will have to learn your customs," Cathari said, curled against his side as dawn approached. "Human courtship rituals, marriage ceremonies. We'll figure it out together." Kai pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Though I should warn you, my mother will want to meet you. She's formidable." Cathari laughed, a sound like silver bells that he'd grown to treasure. "More formidable than a Threnody warrior. Different kind of formidable. She'll want to know your intentions toward her son." "My intentions?" Cathari raised herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with mock seriousness. "I intend to claim him as my mate and defend him against all challengers." "That's very Threnody of you." "I am still Threnody, Kai. That will never change." "I wouldn't want it to," he said honestly. "I love all of you, the warrior and the woman who sings like morning wind." She was about to respond when an alarm began wailing throughout the station. Not the general alert they used for equipment failures or minor emergencies, but the sharp, urgent tone that meant immediate danger. They were on their feet instantly, Cathari's warrior instincts taking over even as Kai reached for his communicator. "Torrens here," he said, accepting the incoming transmission. "Kai, thank God." It was Chen, one of the communications officers. "We've got 3 unidentified ships approaching fast. They're not responding to hails and their energy signatures." His voice cracked slightly. "They matched the vessels from the attack 2 weeks ago." Kai felt the blood drain from his face. Beside him, Cathari had gone rigid, her enhanced hearing picking up every word. "How long do we have?" Kai asked. "Maybe 30 minutes. The security chief wants all non-essential personnel to evacuate to the emergency bunkers." "Understood. We'll be right there." But when he turned to Cathari, she was already moving toward the small weapons locker where she'd insisted he store the salvaged Threnody blades she'd recovered from the wreckage. "No," she said flatly before he could speak. "They are not here for your mining station. Cathari, they are here for me." Her voice carried the cold certainty of absolute knowledge. "To eliminate a disgrace to the Threnody name and anyone who might have witnessed their mercy." The word dripped with bitter irony. Kai grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Then we run. We take one of the escape pods and get as far from here as possible." "And go where?" She pulled away, checking the edge of her weapon with professional efficiency. "They will hunt me across the galaxy if necessary. Better to end it here." "Not alone, you won't." She froze. "Kai, no, this is not your fight." "Like hell it isn't." He was already pulling on his clothes, his mind racing through the station's defensive capabilities. "You're mine, Cathari. That makes it my fight." For a moment, her warrior's mask slipped, revealing the woman underneath. "I cannot ask you to die for me." "You're not asking. I'm choosing." He moved to the weapons locker, pulling out the human pulse rifle he'd hoped never to use. "Besides, you've been training me for 2 weeks. Time to see if I learned anything." Before she could protest further, his communicator crackled again. This time it was a voice that made Cathari snarl like a wounded predator. "Vex High of the Fallen." "House." The alien voice spoke in accented standard, clearly intending for any humans listening to understand. "We know you still live. We know you have been hiding among the humans like a parasite. Come to Docking Bay 3 alone, and we will make your death quick. Refuse, and we will reduce this station to atoms, and everyone on it will share your fate." War Leader. "Thanek," Cathari spat, her grip tightening on her blade. "My former commander. How did they find you?" Her expression grew grim, the same way they tracked me before. "Every Threnody warrior has a biosignature implant. I thought it was destroyed in the attack, but..." She touched a spot high on her neck, just below her hairline. "It must have been damaged but not destroyed. Damaged enough to make them think I was dead, but still functional enough to eventually reactivate. Can we remove it?" "Not without killing me. It's integrated with my nervous system." She turned to face him fully, and he saw his own death written in her eyes. "Kai, you must understand. They have been watching us. They know about you, about what we mean to each other. That makes you a target whether I go to them or not." The communicator crackled again, Thanek's voice filled with cruel amusement. "We have been monitoring your little nest, traitor. Your human pet has been most entertaining. Did you think we would allow such contamination to spread? You have 10 minutes. Cathari's face went white with rage. "He's been watching us," she whispered. "Listening to us, our conversations, our everything." The violation of their privacy, their intimacy, hit Kai like a physical blow. But beneath the anger, his engineer's mind was already working. If they've been monitoring us, they know the station's layout. They know our defensive capabilities. He looked at her grimly. "But they don't know what we've been teaching each other." Understanding dawned in her golden eyes. "The maintenance tunnels, the ones you showed me when I asked about human engineering." "Exactly. They'll expect us to either surrender or make a stand in the main corridors." Kai shouldered his rifle, checking the charge. "But we've got another option." Cathari smiled then, fierce and predatory. "You want to hunt the hunters? I want to show them what happens when they threaten the people I love." Outside, the first Threnody ship was docking. The maintenance tunnels beneath the station were a maze that Kai knew by heart, and Cathari had memorized with typical Threnody efficiency. They moved through the narrow passages like ghosts, her enhanced hearing and his knowledge of the stations, systems combining into something greater than either could achieve alone. 3 warriors plus Thanek," Cathari whispered as they approached Junction Point 7. "They will expect me to face them with honor, in open combat." "Good thing we're not playing by their rules," Kai replied, checking his rifle's charge for the 3rd time. His hands were steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. 2 weeks of training with a master warrior had taught him to channel fear into focus. Through the thin metal grating above them, they could hear heavy footsteps and the distinctive hum of Threnody energy weapons. The hunting party had spread out through the station's main corridors, searching for their prey with methodical precision. "The humans have fled to their burrows," came Thanek's voice, distorted slightly by the acoustics but still audible, all except one. "Your pet must be braver than most of his kind, traitor, or more foolish." Cathari's eyes blazed with fury, but her voice remained controlled. "He seeks to anger you, to make you careless. Is it working?" "Yes." Her smile was sharp as a blade. "But I learned long ago to use my anger, not be used by it." They had reached the junction beneath Docking Bay 3. According to Kai's calculations, Thanak would be almost directly above them, waiting in the open space where he expected his former subordinate to present herself for execution. The other 3 warriors would be positioned at strategic points throughout the corridor, ready to cut off any escape routes. Remember, Caethari breathed against his ear. Threnody armor is strongest at the chest and back. The joints at shoulder and thigh are vulnerable, as is the throat. And remember, Kai replied, human weapons are designed for suppression fire. Don't try to match their mobility. Use cover and angles. She pressed her forehead against his briefly, a gesture of intimacy that somehow held more weight than any kiss. If I fall, you won't. But if I do not try to avenge me. Run, live, remember what we had. We're both walking out of here, Kai said firmly. We have a house by the ocean to build, remember? Before she could respond, he triggered the manual release on the grating above them. The metal panel fell away with a clang that echoed through the corridor, and Kai rolled up and out of the maintenance tunnel with fluid grace that would have made his teacher proud. He came up firing, the pulse rifle spitting coherent energy at the nearest Threnody warrior. The alien's armor absorbed most of the impact, but the surprise attack achieved its purpose, creating chaos and drawing attention away from Caethari's position. The Threnody responded with lethal efficiency, energy beams searing the air where Kai had been a split second before. But he was already moving, using the maintenance equipment and structural supports as cover exactly as Caethari had taught him. Don't be where they expect you to be. Move like water. Strike like lightning. Clever little vermin, snarled one of the warriors, adjusting his aim to track Kai's movements. But you only delay the inevitable. That was when Caethari struck. She erupted from the shadows behind them like an avenging spirit, her salvaged blade singing through the air. The first warrior went down before he knew she was there, her strike finding the vulnerable joint between his helmet and chest plate with surgical precision. "Hello, Thanak," she said calmly, settling into a combat stance as the remaining warriors turned to face this new threat. "I received your message." The war leader was a mountain of muscle and armor, easily 7 feet tall with the scars of 100 battles marking his exposed skin. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Vexhai, you look well for a dead warrior." His gaze shifted to Kai, who had taken up position behind a support pillar with clear lines of fire. "And I see the reports of your contamination were not exaggerated. The only contamination here is you," Caethari replied, her blade held ready. "You left me to die rather than face the truth. That mercy can be stronger than cruelty." "Mercy?" Thanak laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "You call it mercy to spare enemies who would see our people extinct? You call it mercy to couple with an inferior species like some beast in heat?" Kai felt his finger tighten on the trigger, but Caethari's voice stopped him from firing. "I call it evolution," she said. "Something your fossilized mind could never understand." The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military doctrine or Threnody warrior tradition. It was a dance of partnership, each combatant supporting and amplifying the other's strengths. When Thanak pressed his attack against Caethari, Kai's precisely placed shots forced him to break off or expose himself to enemy fire. When the remaining warriors tried to flank Kai's position, Caethari was there to intercept them, her blade weaving deadly patterns in the air. They fought as one mind in 2 bodies, anticipating each other's moves with an intimacy born of trust and love. Kai's human ingenuity combined with Caethari's Threnody skill created something entirely new, a fighting style that was greater than the sum of its parts. One by one, the hunters became the hunted. The second warrior fell to a combination attack, Kai's rifle fire disrupting his aim while Caethari's blade found his throat. The third managed to wound Kai with a glancing blow to his shoulder, before Caethari's fury ended his threat permanently. Finally, only Thanak remained. The war leader fought with the desperate ferocity of someone who had realized too late that he was outmatched. His energy weapon carved smoking gouges in the walls as he tried to pin down his elusive opponents, but they refused to engage him on his terms. "You cannot run forever, traitor," he roared, his armor smoking from multiple rifle hits. "I'm not running," Caethari replied. And suddenly she was inside his guard, her blade sliding between his chest plates like silk through paper. Thanek staggered, looking down at the weapon buried in his chest with something like surprise. Impossible. You were always weak, always soft. No, Cathari said, driving the blade deeper. I was always stronger than you understood. The war leader collapsed, his weapon clattering across the deck. As his life faded, he looked at Kai with genuine confusion. What did you do to her, human? What poison did you feed her mind? Kai knelt beside the dying alien, meeting his gaze, steadily. I showed her that love isn't weakness. It's the most powerful force in the universe. Thanek's laugh was a wet, rattling sound. Love? You think your animal coupling is love? I think, Kai said quietly, that you'll never understand what we have because you chose to be afraid of it instead of embracing it. The war leader died with confusion in his eyes. In the silence that followed, Kai and Cathari found each other among the wreckage. Her armor was scored with energy burns, his shoulder was bleeding freely, but they were alive. They were together. Is it over? Kai asked, pulling her close despite the pain in his shoulder. For now. Cathari looked around at the bodies of her former comrades with something like sadness. There may be others who come looking eventually, but Thanek was the only one who knew about the implant's reactivation. His death will buy us time. Time for what? She smiled then, the expression transforming her face from warrior to woman. Time to see Earth's oceans. Time to build that house. Time to prove that two different worlds can become one without either losing what makes them special. 3 months later, they stood on a beach on New Mombasa, watching the sun set over waters that stretched to the infinity. Cathari wore a simple human dress that complemented her alien beauty, while Kai's arm was finally out of its healing brace. The sound is just as you described it, she said, listening to the eternal rhythm of waves against sand. Like the wind through the crystal formations of my homeworld, but deeper, more ancient. Do you miss it? Your home? Cathari considered the question seriously. I miss what it could have been, but this... She gestured to the sunset, the ocean, the small cottage they had rented just beyond the tide line. This is what home should feel like. No regrets? Only one. She turned in his arms, golden eyes serious. I regret that it took so long to find you. When they kissed, tasted by salt spray and blessed by starlight, the universe itself seemed to approve. Love had conquered fear, partnership had triumphed over isolation, and two hearts that had learned to sing together would never again beat alone. In the distance, their cottage waited, humble but filled with possibility. It was not a palace, but it was theirs. And for a warrior who had been treated like refuse and a man who had lived without dreams, it was more than enough. It was everything.